Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, so welcome back to the Chip Chat Room. We're now discussing a very, very big, important topic because today we spent a lot of time talking about your study guide. We spent a lot of time talking about the test. We spent a lot of time talking about all these different little odds and ends, right? So we also really got into the 5 good emperors and a bunch of these really garbage emperors that were absolutely terrible, right? Which several of them will appear on your test. 2 of the bad emperors will appear on your test. 1 of them will not, all right? And I'm not going to tell you which one. You just need to know all 3 of them, right? So, and I even talked about a couple other ones, like Elagabalus and Caracalla and a couple other guys as well. But the 5 good emperors were great. You got Nervan, Trajan, Pius. Nervan, Trajan, Hadrian, Pius, Marcus Aurelius, right? Those are very important. You need to study them. But something you need to also really understand is that it doesn't matter how many good emperors you have, because the fall is now coming, right? And I don't mean like summer in Rome is beautiful, and then the spring is also great. Winter's the best, and the fall, the fall of Rome is coming, right? Because this is now, and also just a heads up, we're going to insanely oversimplify this, right? The fall of Rome literally spanned almost 250 years. Took a huge amount of time. But we are going to hit the high notes as the reason why Rome eventually fell and why Rome is not still the dominant empire throughout all of Western history. But it is very, very important for you to know the major themes, right? And first of all, what you really need to understand is that Rome is going to really, really decline in the West, right? The Romans are going to decline heavily in the West, right? On the western half of their empire, so towards this direction. But as you can see, the empire is absolutely huge. Now, Western Rome kind of starts and ends right about there. You would consider Eastern Rome to be Turkey, Greece, and a little bit of North Africa. You would consider Western Rome to be modern-day Britain, France, Spain, Italy, and a little bit of North Africa as well. All right, so that is Rome at its peak, right? At 117 AD, it is at its biggest. But we got some trouble a-brewing in the Roman Empire, right? Because immediately after the death of Marcus Aurelius, right, you got guys like Commodus coming in to take over, the gladiator king. But the problem about it is Rome is becoming much, much more unable to govern itself effectively. They had 70 emperors, 70 different emperors that all but 8 of them died from all but 8 of them died from being murdered by the senators and things like that. So the issue that you have right now in Rome is that all these rulers are coming to power that are absolute terrible people, right? They are unable to govern themselves effectively. So tyrants like Caligula and Nero and Commodus are seizing power. Now, ironically enough, some of y'all who are huge nerds like a Sophia Ferrero will probably be like, wait, but Caligula and Nero were from the Pax Romana. I know, calm down, I'm just using them as an example, right? A tyrant is an aggressive ruler who wants to rule through power and fear, right? So you've got these guys popping up, and they're all being murdered like crazy. Citizens are losing respect for their government en masse, so much so that it leads to this thing known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Now, the 3rd century is going to be the 200s AD. So the moment that Marcus Aurelius pretty much dies, you're going to start leading to these negative emperors. And then in the 3rd century, which is in the 200s AD, now 200 years following the birth of Christ, we talked about today in class how the growth of Christianity is going to be a big thing, and Christ was actually born in the Roman Empire at one point. Now, the thing about it is Rome is in a heap of trouble. They got revolts popping up left and right. You've got these people they've taken over, like the Gauls, popping up, and they're being like, we don't want to be ruled by Romans anymore. You've got, like, conscript armies getting really upset because they don't get the same equipment that other Roman legionaries do because they're hitting people with rocks, and legionaries have gladiuses and stuff like that, right? You've got huge amounts of issues, so much so to the point that 2 rogue states pop up, right? In the northwest of Rome towards Gaul and Britain, and then in the east of Rome towards Greece, these 2 states pop up where they're like, we are no longer a part of the Roman Empire. We are our own state. We're going to keep all the stuff that Rome built, but we're our own state now. And people are invading the edges of the empire, right? But then enter this guy, Diocletian, right? Diocletian shows up, and he's a heavily debated figure. Because is he a scumbag or is he an absolute savior, right? Because the big thing he does is he uses the military to go in and bring those 2 rogue states back into the empire, right? He destroys the revolts, he kills their leaders, brings them back into the empire, and then to make it more easily managed, Diocletian decides to divide, get it? Diocletian divides the empire into 4 separate parts, right? Each part being led by a governor, and this would make it easy, or a supreme governor that reports to their other governors. So he's basically creating an effective bureaucratic system, right? He saved the empire from crumbling completely because you've got these little people that are trying to attack the borders, like the Germanics people, and the Huns are going to be really bad later. But like all these other people that are kind of like ding, 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 and they're just like really, really pestering the ever-loving daylights out of the edges of the empire, right? So Diocletian takes the empire and divides it into 4 separate parts, right? He just goes wham, 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 and divides it into all these different parts. And then following this entire thing, he retires. He retires and he goes off to become a farmer, just like Cincinnatus, right? This is very, very important, okay? This is a big thing. He retires to go become a farmer, just like Cincinnatus. And then an emperor would actually rise up in his place, right? They tried to get back to the Republic. It didn't work out, and then an emperor pops up again because that is just what this is. It's the empire period, right? Now, he's awesome for saving the empire, but he also had 3,000, over 3,000, almost 4,000 Christians executed in the Colosseum, right? He would have these massive games where in the middle, like little halftime shows or whatever, they would be like, okay, well, we also have a lot of Christians to execute today. So he was a huge persecutor of the Christians, right? He would have them tied to logs like this with their hands behind their back in the middle of the Colosseum, and they would release lions that hadn't eaten in several days to go out there and kill them and eat them in front of the Roman people who were all eating bread and going, "Rah!" and like cheering because they're so excited that these Christians are being executed by Diocletian. He had some of them burned as like on these large posts. Diocletian, not a good person in the Christian faith. He's cool for when he like saves the empire from crumbling, but he also kind of killed 3,500 people by letting yeah. So anyway, then you're going to have some more civil wars pop up, right? Civil unrest is a major theme of the fall of Rome as well. Until, well, that's Keanu Reeves. All right, so like not this Constantine, but that Constantine shows up, all right? So this Constantine is a very all-important ruler. Constantine shows up, and he retakes the entire empire. He was the leader of the furthest Western Roman state, right? And he sees that a couple of the other states are going to try and take over the entirety of the empire. So he says, no, no, no. And he goes over there and takes over the entire thing and becomes the next emperor following Diocletian's chop up of the empire, right? And he retakes the entire empire. And his big idea is, let's not make just one capital, the one in Italy, let's make 2 of them, right? And so he creates 2 different capital cities, one in the original Rome that exists in Italy, and the other one over in Greece, or towards Greece, in a place called Nova Roma, meaning New Rome, which would later be renamed Constantinople after him, right? So this is also, he is going to be huge. He is going to legalize Christianity. Because according to legend, all right, so according to legend, at a major battle that Constantine was about to go off and fight, he had a dream beforehand that literally he looked up into the stars while the, while his battle was occurring, and he saw an image that was given to him by Christ and God themselves. And he had that image carved onto the shields of his soldiers after he woke up, and they won this major battle. And so he then apparently converts to Christianity and legalizes Christianity within the entirety of the Roman Empire. So we don't have to worry about people like Diocletian or Nero anymore killing Christians and like having them sacrificed and burning them and chopping them up and then doing all this other crazy stuff. Now we get to actually have legalized Christianity through the entire Roman Empire. And a big reason why Christianity is as big as it is today is because of Constantine and his Edict of Milan is what it's called. The Edict of Milan, where he actually makes Christianity completely legal, and then also at the Council of Nicaea, they literally create some of the very first complete texts of the Holy Bible, right? So he establishes also a co-rule system based when needed. Sometimes he was like, maybe if we have a lot of revolts going on, we'll have two rulers, and maybe we only need one. A lot of it really just depended on the situation. But he's very important for legalizing Christianity and establishing a second capital, right? The one at Nova Roma. And where he establishes this is he establishes it right over here, over in the between the border of Greece. Well, that's actually Bulgaria now. Bulgaria and Turkey. And Constantinople becomes a major trade city later on, and it's kind of a really, really big reason why the Romans were able to stay alive for as long as they did. All right, so now then you're going to see like they just keep going from like one province to the other, right? We got tyrants taking over. Diocletian fixes that. Then you got Diocletian murdering Christians and establishing 4 states, and then one of those 4 states decides they want to pop up and take over everything. And then you got Constantine fixing that, right? And then once that occurs and is finally done, now you're being invaded by multiple barbaric tribes, right? So in the late 300s and early 400s AD, so let's say the late 300s and the early 400s AD, you're seeing these barbarian tribes invade, right? And migrate too. This is a very important thing because they needed land to escape these people known as the Huns, right? The Huns are a massive barbarian tribe, huge barbarian tribe led by this guy named Attila the Hun, right? And Attila the Hun leads a huge marauding force of these people known as Huns coming out of what is modern-day Russia, right? So, and they are sweeping down through Russia, going into where the outskirts of where the Roman territory is, right? And since other groups of barbarians are running away from Attila, they're migrating into, oh wait, okay, no, let's clear this. Okay, so you got Attila out here, right? We're going to be like, oh, there's Attila, right? Attila the Hun is going to be out here, and the Roman Empire, kind of the outskirts of it are like right around this dotted line, right? So they like exist right about there. Now, it would be stupid to think that there aren't people that live here and 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 here. These are other barbarian tribes, like the Germanics or the Goths or the Vandals or other people that live out that way. So as Attila's forces are invading, taking more land, and destroying other barbarian communities, these people are going to be like, I want to get away! And they're like running away from Attila, and they're migrating into the Roman Empire, right? That means the Romans now have to try and figure out ways to assimilate these people in. Also, some of them are going to invade, and they're going to get furious when the Romans don't actually help them escape Attila. And Attila at one point actually was right here and actually threatened to take over the entire eastern half of Rome until apparently one of the popes, earliest popes or something like that, one of the earliest Christian figures, you'll have to ask Mr. Mathern about it. And I'll get him to tell you the story in class. But apparently, he saw God and he paid Attila's ransom or something crazy happened. But Attila literally held Rome captive and said, if you don't do whatever, then I'm going to take over all of Rome. And they were like, please don't do that. And they actually paid this ransom off. And Attila would then go back and got married that night and then he died. All right, so it's crazy. Now, anyway, the Huns though, the Huns are, oh, that's the Pope. Speaking of Mr. Mathern. Now, big thing about it though is Attila is invading out of Russia, right? And so they're moving these other barbarian tribes forward, and as these barbarian tribes are looking for more land, some of them will begin to invade, right? So some of the Germanic tribes, like the Visigoths, begin to invade the eastern borders of the Roman Empire. Then you got the Vandals that show up, right? The Vandals actually showed up and went straight into the city of Rome and completely sacked it and attacked it in 406 BC, right? And the Vandals took items, destroyed monuments, and killed a lot of people. And the reason why you refer to someone destroying property just for the sake of destroying it and not actually getting anything out of it, we call that vandalism, right? Because when the Vandals showed up in 406, they destroyed Roman monuments, not for the wealth of it, but just to do it, right? Because they were so furious that the Romans were not aiding other barbaric tribes, and they also knew that Rome was home to a lot of different stuff, a lot of different goods, a lot of different materials, a lot of different wealth, so they invaded Rome to try and take all that stuff, right? So they took items, they destroyed everything, and that's why we refer to it as vandalism, right? And so due to these barbarian migrations and due to all this movement of people throughout Rome, the economy is going to begin to suffer in Western Rome, particularly in Western Rome. Eastern Rome is actually kind of doing fine. So now, in Western Rome, the economy begins to suffer, and trade is going to begin to decline because of the movement of all these people around. Trade begins to suffer. The Roman roads that were so great don't get traveled as much because of all this chaos and stuff going on. And also, since trade is declining, money is losing value because it's not being minted as often. The price of food is going to rise as well. And then so to try and fix this problem, the government tries to coin as much money as it possibly can. So now inflation skyrockets, right? So now you've got Roman money that's worth almost nothing. And then this gigantic idiot shows up, right? Theodosius. Theodosius right here shows up and decides, we need to permanently split the Roman Empire in half. He's a dummy, all right? So he's not that bright, apparently, because he decides to, get it, banana split, split the empire into 2 complete sides so that they can apparently effectively, do their own thing. He divided the leadership of the empire, and so he made it so there was an emperor in the west, and then there was an emperor in the east, right? He led the east, and he let somebody else lead the west, and what ends up occurring is the western half of Rome is unfortunately going to fall, right? The eastern half of Rome kept continuing forward, and then the eastern half of Rome, following Theodosius, is going to fall when they are taken over completely by the Ostrogoths, right? And then all these other barbarian tribes are going to begin to invade the borders. They're going to destroy other Roman monuments, artifacts, their cities, then burn them to the ground, and they kind of just take out this aggression that they had against Rome over hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And this is huge. You got to make sure you know these things, because this is a fill-in-the-blank question, okay? Western Rome, this side of Rome is going to officially fall in 476 AD. To the Ostrogoths, right? The Ostrogoths come in and take it over completely, and they elect an Ostrogoth king who then begins to rule over what was formerly Rome, and the Roman Empire is now torched and gone, right? So in 476 AD, Rome goes kaput, right? So by 500 AD, the Roman Empire is now being broken up amongst other barbarian tribes. You have the Franks out where France is now. You have the Visigoths out towards Spain. You have the Germanics up towards Germany. You have the Angles out in England, right? So you have all these groups that are breaking it up into other smaller kingdoms. And the eastern half of Rome, though, the eastern half is going to truck on until 1453, and they're going to be completely fine. Now, we're going to talk about this really quick, and some of you are going to be like, but I thought you said Rome stayed alive. Well, it's the eastern half, right? And Renaissance writers later on are going to refer to it as something else, okay? All right, so there you go. That is it. Western Rome falls in 476 BC due to a lot of rebellion, a lot of revolt, bad rulers, persecution of Christians, and then another ruler takes over and tries to save everything. Then we got multiple things, and they split the whole thing in half. It's a big issue, all right? We'll talk about this stuff before you take your test. Make sure you study really well. I'll see you guys later. Y'all have a good one.